Breaking news this morning. Speaker Nancy Pelosi requests House committee chairman draw up articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. For only the fourth time in U.S. history, a sitting president will be subject to impeachment proceedings. Our live coverage begins now. Good Thursday morning, folks. Thank you for joining us here on WFLA's live streaming coverage, continuing coverage of the impeachment hearings of President Donald Trump. This morning, just a few moments ago, within the past hour, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing that she is asking House Committee Chairman of the Judiciary and Intelligence Committees to draw up articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. This is breaking news, and we will have a guest from the Republican National Committee in just a moment. First, though, JB, a lot of action on social, and clearly we want to make sure that people know what's happening. We'll be playing a soundbite from that press conference that Speaker Nancy Pelosi gave just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, and we have a tweet here from President Trump that was just delivered less than 5 minutes ago. We are going to be reading your comments here on Facebook Live, where you can use the hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyEvan. We're going to be reading your comments. We want to hear your response to Nancy Pelosi announcing intentions for articles of impeachment to be drafted. We'll be back in a few minutes to read your comments. Again, use the hashtag HeyJB or hashtag HeyEvan for us to read your comments. We want your voice to be heard.
And let's start out with how this all happened. Earlier in the month of November, there were 2 weeks of impeachment proceedings in front of the Intelligence Committee. There were many witnesses who testified to things that they had heard, both firsthand and secondhand. We heard about the whistleblower complaint against President Donald Trump regarding the July 25th phone call between Presidents Trump and Zelensky, where President Trump asked President Zelensky for a favor to announce investigations into former Vice President Joe Biden. The House Democrats allege that he did that while withholding military aid from the Ukraine, as well as a meeting at the White House, which of course would have benefited President Zelensky as he comes into office trying to fight corruption in the Ukraine. Just about 2 hours ago, at about 8 o'clock this morning, the president tweeted about the impeachment proceedings yesterday, and it turned out to be sort of prescient. He said at just after 8 o'clock this morning, the do-nothing Democrats had a historically bad day yesterday in the House. They have no impeachment case and are demeaning our country, but nothing matters to them. They have gone crazy. Therefore, I say, if you are going to impeach me, do it now, fast, so we can have a fair trial in the Senate and so that our country can get back to business. Just a short while after that tweet, Nancy Pelosi held a press conference and announced that she would be asking committee chairmen to draw up articles of impeachment. Here's a soundbite from that press conference.
The president's actions have seriously violated the Constitution, especially when he says and acts upon the belief. Article 2 says I can do whatever I want. No, his wrongdoing strikes at the very heart of our Constitution, a separation of powers, 3 co-equal branches, each a check and balance on the other.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi there talking about the checks and balances in our Constitution. I want to get immediate reaction right now from Republican National Committee spokesperson Liz Harrington. Liz joins us live now on these impeachment live streams, as she has done before. Liz, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to just get your immediate reaction to what's happened, all of this news breaking within the past few hours.
I think it's a disgrace, and I think it's Nancy Pelosi not only turning her back on the founding fathers and the Constitution, but turning her back on her own promise, which was an impeachment is something very serious, and it needs to be compelling, overwhelming, and bipartisan. She has yet to convince a single Republican. She has yet to convince the American people. And instead of giving a present to the American people, like bringing the USMCA off her desk to the floor, it's been waiting for a year, the new trade deal between Mexico and Canada to be passed. Instead of doing that, she's giving a gift to her radical far left base that has vowed to impeach this president the minute he was sworn into office, long before there was ever a phone call with Ukraine.
The president actually tweeted following Nancy Pelosi's press conference as well. I want to read that to you. President Trump saying, the do-nothing radical left Democrats have just announced that they are going to seek to impeach me over nothing. They already gave up on the ridiculous Mueller stuff, so now they hang their hats on 2 totally appropriate, perfect phone calls with the Ukrainian president. This will mean that the beyond important and seldom used act of impeachment will be used routinely to attack future presidents. That's not what our founders had in mind. The good thing is that the Republicans have never been more united. We will win. I want you to respond to that part right there. Do you feel like this is going to create a situation where every future split government in power, where we have one party in the White House and a different party controlling the House, will result in impeachment being used as a political tool?
I think it's a terrible precedent that Democrats are setting. And think about where we are right now. They still have yet to vote on actual an impeachment resolution. They've just voted on codifying a sham process by Adam Schiff in the bunker, the basement of the Capitol building. They haven't put anyone on the record, when that's why they haven't allowed the president any due process, a right to an attorney present, the minority rights to subpoena or to call witnesses for the Republicans, to actually have a defense. We've had a completely one-sided process, and that's why it's a dangerous precedent the way they've gone about it so far. But it's even more dangerous that Democrats, less than a year out before an election, are trying to overturn the results of the last one. They're trying to overturn the votes of 63 million Americans who elected Donald Trump, whether they like it or not, as their president in 2016 in an electoral college landslide. And it's a terrible precedent to set that we're going to try to impeach you to damage you going into a re-election year. We're going to try to impeach you because we disagree with you on policy or personality. That is not what the founders intended, and that's what the Democrats have been doing, and that's what the American people see through it. This has been a vendetta from the beginning. We lived through $32 million taxpayer-funded Mueller report, which showed that the Democrats lied about the president for over 2 years, spinning a conspiracy theory about President Trump and Russia. It was a lie. And now they're spinning a conspiracy theory about President Trump withholding aid to Ukraine. It's another lie. They have no basis of evidence or facts. They're not waiting for the courts to sort out who should testify or not. They're barreling forward in an impeachment because they're so desperate to figure out a way to beat President Trump next year, because they're clearly not confident in their crop of candidates who are running for president, and they're not confident about their prospects for defeating President Trump fairly and squarely at the ballot box next year.
In the past few weeks in these hearings, Republicans did have a chance to call some witnesses, not as many as they would like, I think, to your point.
3 out of 12. And they all refuted the Democrats' core arguments that there was any quid pro quo.
And yesterday's attorney Jonathan Turley of George Washington, 1 out of 4, to your point. But this isn't a trial. The Democrats control the House, a result of them winning control of the House in 2018. But he will have a chance to participate, and he was asked to participate, as well as his counsel, particularly yesterday in front of the Judiciary Committee. The president declined. But he will be able to participate if and when this moves to a trial, which, of course, we do expect to happen because House Democrats have the votes to impeach the president if it comes to that, which appears obviously as though it will. What is his plan for if and when, or when we expect that this moves to the Senate? Will he be president calling witnesses? Does the president plan to participate in the process himself?
Well, one quick thing to note, the Democrats asked, so graciously, for the president to participate when they knew he would be over in London leading on the world stage at the NATO conference, for one. Obviously, he was not going to participate then. And also, when it goes to the Senate, we're going to have an actual trial, not Adam Schiff's show trial where he pronounced the president guilty and then controlled the whole process and controlled the whole witness list. We'll have an opportunity to not only call the so-called whistleblower, who is a registered Democrat who leaked and coordinated with Adam Schiff's committee, but we're also going to be able to call Adam Schiff, who not only is a fact witness, since he was tweeting out these allegations long before anyone ever knew there was a quote-unquote whistleblower complaint. He's a fact witness in this. His committee met with this person in the CIA. And not only is he a fact witness, he's pretending to be a special counsel. Robert Mueller testified, Ken Starr testified, then Adam Schiff should testify. And you know who else will get to testify? Hunter Biden. We can see exactly what Burisma was paying him for, which All the Democrats' star witnesses, they controlled this whole process from the beginning. They called their star witnesses to try to damage the president. Every single one of those witnesses said the fact that Hunter Biden was on the board was a conflict of interest for that Ukrainian natural gas company when Vice President Joe Biden was running point on Ukraine. That is a problem. They all confirmed it's a problem. And they also confirmed that the Obama administration knew it was a problem and wanted to look into it back in 2015. Why is the president not able to mention that in passing? The Democrats never have an answer for that. But we're going to get to find out with an actual trial in the Senate.
RNC spokeswoman Liz Harrington joining us live right here on WFLA streaming coverage of the impeachment hearings of Donald Trump. Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing just this morning that she has asked committee chairmen to draw up articles of impeachment. You mentioned right there that in a possible trial in the Senate, that the president and Republicans would get a chance to call Hunter Biden. I think there's been bipartisan, as you mentioned, the Obama administration, members of the State Department, all saying that it's a possible conflict of interest that Hunter Biden was on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. No allegation of wrongdoing, though, at this point. What does the president or Republicans expect to get out of Hunter Biden if he is able to be called in front of the Senate?
Let's find out what he was paid for. He had no experience. 2 months prior, had gotten kicked out of the Navy. 2 months prior, Vice President Joe Biden was all of a sudden running point on Ukraine. He was making, with no experience, clearly lots of personal issues in his life, making $50,000 a month, upwards of $83,000 a month. What were they paying him for? And Joe Biden is on tape bragging about getting a prosecutor fired, bragging about how he threatened Ukraine with withholding $1 billion in loan guarantees unless they fired a prosecutor, which it's indisputable whether you think the prosecutor should have been fired for other reasons or not. He was overseeing an investigation into that company where Hunter Biden was sitting on the board with absolutely no experience. And he's admitted himself the only reason he was on that board is because of his last name. And if you've been reading the New York Post lately, it certainly didn't look like Hunter Biden was up to advising on corporate governance the years that he was sitting on the Burisma board. There's a lot of questions. And yes, none of it has been proven because it's never been looked into. George Kent brought it to Vice President Joe Biden back in 2015. He said, what is going on here? Why is your son on the board? They said they didn't have the bandwidth. So no one ever actually looked at this and what they were paying for. If you're talking about bribery, that is a much more fair allegation to bring up when you're talking about Hunter Biden and Burisma and Joe Biden.
Just to be factual regarding the firing of that prosecutor, that was something requested by the entire Western world, the IMF, the EU. That was American foreign policy. Everyone wanted that prosecutor fired because he was not doing enough investigation into corruption, including into the former president of Burisma. So I think that's just to set the factual record there about why
Joe
he wasn't
Biden
being
can
investigated.
release the transcripts of his phone calls with Ukraine, and he can set that matter to bed. We'd love to see what he was telling Ukraine behind the scenes as well.
I want to pull up a full screen right now, Liz, of the possible articles of impeachment that it appears may be included in the articles when they're drawn up by judiciary: abuse of power, bribery, obstruction of Congress, possible obstruction of justice. It looks like there may be some of the issues from the Mueller report brought back into the fold now as articles are drawn up. Your reaction yesterday to the testimony that we heard, some of the great legal minds from some of the best law schools in the country, some saying that the president's actions rose to the level of bribery and corruption and extortion. Jonathan Turley, another prominent legal scholar, saying that it did not. I assume that you obviously saw that testimony. Your reaction to the back and forth between these great legal minds?
I found it very interesting that the Democrats barely asked a single question to Jonathan Turley. The entire 45 minutes where he had the Democrat counsel questioning the witnesses, he only questioned the liberal professors. He never questioned Jonathan Turley, and which has to bring to mind the question of all your viewers. If this case, as the Democrats claim, is so open and shut, it's ironclad, it's so impeachable, why are they not willing to ask and let it stand up to scrutiny from another legal mind who has a dissenting view, who is also not a supporter of the president. Jonathan Turley is not a supporter at all of President Trump. And yet they were unwilling to test their theory out to a dissenting voice. And I think that just shows you what's so wrong with what the Democrats are doing. They're not interested in making this bipartisan. They're not interested in making this a compelling, overwhelming, and bipartisan, as Nancy Pelosi promised back in March. They're not interested in all. They're interested in just jamming this through. And so the idea that they're going to bring the Mueller report and resurrect that very expensive taxpayer-funded report that found no collusion, no obstruction, no wrongdoing, but we wasted over 2 years on this conspiracy theory, which, by the way, was paid for by Hillary Clinton and the DNC, the idea that President Trump was colluding with Russia. It was always a lie. And the idea that they're going to bring that in, I mean, the second half of the very expensive Mueller report was all about the president's tweets. It was absolutely absurd and a mockery to any standard of justice. So I think it shows how desperate the Democrats are. This has been their game from the beginning. They've never accepted President Trump, his victory in 2016. They've been looking for any reason to try to overturn that result. And that's why we're seeing this very one-sided, partisan display with no facts, no evidence, no proof, no nothing.
Interesting that you are right. I noticed a couple of times that the Democratic Council asked questions of the entire panel, but those didn't go to Jonathan Turley. But the same happened on the other side. Republicans primarily focusing on Jonathan Turley and not asking very many questions of the other three attorneys. I do want to also point out there are multiple instances of obstruction in the Mueller report. It will be hashed out in a trial, I guess, in the Senate, whether or not those rose to the level of impeachment.
Someone? I mean, what were the arguments for not firing someone? I mean, he never fired Don McGahn. That was their big argument. It's absolutely absurd.
Well, he actually requested to fire James Comey through Don McGahn. That was also in the report. But I don't want to hash that out here.
He has every right to fire Jim Comey, and Democrats wanted him fired as well.
Sure, but there were multiple other instances of possible obstruction there. I don't want to hash out the Mueller report here. It would take too long. But Liz, I do want to get your reaction.
The American people don't want either, but the Democrats are bringing it into play.
And I guess we'll hear more about that as it goes to the Senate. I do want to ask you, though, about something that has bipartisan support, which is the president was in NATO over the past couple of days and is getting other countries to pay more of their fair share into NATO. I think that's one of the successes of President Trump's first term here that doesn't get a lot of coverage because of the other issues that have happened. Can you talk to that a little bit and why that's so important to America's national interests?
Absolutely. This is another promise that the president ran on and is delivering on. And President Bush, President Obama, both asked NATO to do more. They wanted our allies to pay more because it makes the entire alliance stronger when we're all contributing what our fair share is, which is 2% of GDP. President Trump has delivered. He's already gotten $190 billion. We're on track for $400 billion by next year. It's a tremendous achievement. The NATO General Secretary specifically credited President Trump and his leadership for this win. It's a win for the taxpayer. It's a win for the world, because if NATO is stronger, the world is stronger. And I think, it doesn't get a lot of attention, of course, because Washington and the Beltway and the Democrats are so obsessed with impeachment, but it is related, because in that transcript of the phone call, what is the president's primary concern? It is getting Europe to do more, getting Germany and other countries to do more with Ukraine. This has been a very consistent stance that the president has had. He ran on it in 2015 and 2016. He's delivering on it now, whether it comes to NATO or whether it comes to fairer, better trade deals with all of our allies, or whether it comes to getting our allies to contribute more to Ukraine. It's very consistent, and it shows that the president is a promise keeper. He's made these promises, and he's delivering.
The president ran on the fact that America needed to be respected again on the world stage, but we saw a video yesterday of multiple world leaders gathered around talking about the president in a disparaging way, sort of joking, making fun of him. Your reaction to that? I mean, he sort of ran on becoming more prominent and making America more respected, and it doesn't appear that's the way that they're reacting to him.
Well, the only person you could actually hear on that tape was Justin Trudeau, who had to kind of walk it back. And I honestly don't think he was, he seemed very nervous when he was talking about the President of the United States in that video, and which I think is very striking. And when you think they should be nervous, because you can't mess with President Trump anymore. You can't mess with the United States anymore. You can't take advantage of us, whether you're a friend or foe. And so Justin Trudeau is the one who had to walk it back. President Trump said, that's two-faced of him, because he was saying one thing to me and then he's swirling his cocktail and, yucking it up with foreign leaders. I don't think the American people, if they see that, that's just fine for us, because we have a president who is respected, who is leading, who is has a healthy fear from our friends and foes. And that's something that we want the President of the United States to have. And I think if we have some European leaders sipping on their cocktails and, gossiping, whatever you want to call it, that's not going to really turn off anybody in middle America. They're certainly going to be happy that President Trump, he's not the president of the world. He never ran on being the president of the world, and we don't need these leaders to actually like him. We want them to actually respect the United States and fear the United States, again, that we can't be taken advantage of.
Liz Harrington, RNC spokeswoman, joining us live here on our continuing coverage of the impeachment hearings of President Donald Trump. Liz, thank you so much for being here. We always appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to bring it back out here to myself and WFLA digital anchor JB Buno. We are monitoring your comments on social media. Please hit us up with the hashtag HeyEvan or HeyJB if you want to let us know what your thoughts are. Please also follow us on Twitter at Evan Donovan and at WFLAJB. You can find us on Facebook under the same. JB, let's get some reaction from social media.
Yeah, we're not going to be we're going to be here for a few minutes longer, everybody, but the reaction, of course, as you would expect, as polarizing as ever. This is, of course, a lightning rod in the process of the historical process of impeaching President Donald Trump, the 45th president of the United States. And, of course, this is just, if anything, from what I'm seeing already on social media, this is already creating an even larger divide between the two sides of how you fall on this argument of whether or not President Trump deserves to be impeached. So,
and I think we knew that was going to happen. In fact, that was why Nancy Pelosi opposed it for so long, because she knew how divisive this was going to be, especially as we are going into an election year. I can say this, we just talked about it, JB. It's going to be an interesting Christmas around a lot of dinner tables.
A very interesting Christmas, and I'm sure that there's going to be some arguments, both healthy and unhealthy arguments taking place around dinner tables across the country at various holiday events, but I'm just going to be candid here for a second. I'm reading through some of the comments here on social media, on our Facebook pages, or on our Facebook page, on other Facebook pages, on Twitter, and it's just it's really unfortunate to see that there is so much negative back and forth, spewing back and forth going on. I've been trying to pluck some comments that are objective, or lean towards being a little bit more objective, but it's hard. It's hard because people have such a emotional reaction to this. People who have been following this now for weeks, or if you were one of the people who voted for President Trump and you are so glad to see what he's doing in our nation's capital, or if you are one of those people out there who just despise our president and can't wait to get to the ballot in 2020. It's just as polarizing of a president as we've ever seen in this country. Here are just some of the comments I'm going to read. Paul in the comment section saying Democrats have completely lost their mind. Brian in the comment section saying Democrats a big joke and haven't done anything except wasting 3 years trying to throw Trump out instead of helping the president fix our country. Virginia saying this will come back to bite many. And then on the other side, Angel saying Republicans are nothing but crooks. Rachel Ginn here in the comment section saying this is so dirty and embarrassing for the USA. I ended on that comment specifically to just talk about really briefly before we have to wrap up here, the international implications, how the United States looks on the world stage right now. Of course, President Trump returning from NATO. If you haven't seen the clip of Justin Trudeau with Emmanuel Macron and
Boris Johnson,
all of them kind of really, I mean, in a circle laughing at President Trump or chuckling at the notion of President Trump and his behavior at press conferences. So the international implications of how the United States is viewed on the world stage is shifting. Domestically, of course, we're reading the comments here, and of course we have a very polarizing national audience out there who many of them are either in the president's corner or very much not in the president's corner. But remember how this is being viewed on the world stage, everybody. Twitter is not exclusive to just the United States. People are tweeting about this around the world, and most of it is negative in response to what is going on right now in Washington, D.C., what's going on with President Trump. So,
but you know what, JB, to Liz Harrington's point, he's not the president of the world, and none of that matters when it comes to 2020's elections. Obviously, we're going to see probably, just to give you an update on what we are expecting here, we do expect that there could be more hearings in front of judiciary, but there may not. This could just be drawn up, these articles of impeachment sent to the full House to take a vote. When that happens, and you're looking right now at the potential articles, the charges that could be included in them, and when the Judiciary Committee draws them up, abuse of power, bribery, obstruction of Congress, obstruction of justice from the Russia investigation back with Robert Mueller. When those articles are drawn up, they will go to the full House for a vote. Democrats control the House, so they have enough votes to impeach the president. If he is impeached, that would then trigger a trial in the Senate. All 100 senators would become effectively jurors in that trial. And that's where you would see more of a legal proceeding where both sides can call witnesses. There would be testimony. It would be quite rancorous, I'm sure. The Democrats expect to take a vote on the articles of impeachment, they've previously said, before Christmas, and before they leave for the holiday break, effectively. That would then put a trial sometime more likely in January. And just remember, January, we're into an election year. The Iowa caucuses start on February 3rd. So once you come back from the holiday break, it's really a short timeline before you get into the business of campaigning and everything is taken over by 2020. So people will have their chance to cast a ballot and decide how they want their reaction to all of this impeachment news to be heard next year. We're just 11 months away from a crucial election in our nation's history.
And we're here in Florida, where it is going to be extremely exciting, historic, but of course the pivotal swing state perhaps in the country, Florida. We're going to be monitoring everything that transpires between Democrats and Republicans extremely closely, every move underneath the microscope, really between now and November 2020. Evan bringing up an excellent point here, folks.
Yeah.
I want to. We're going to take a couple more minutes here to read some comments.
Sure.
Again, right here beneath our faces, everybody, you see the hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyEvan. We're going to read through a few more comments if you use those hashtags. We have thousands of people watching online. If you use those hashtags, it's easier for me to kind of pluck those comments out. So we want your voice to be heard. We're here live for you on digital so that your voice can be heard, so you can ask questions. You can make sure that your comment is read. So use those hashtags, HeyJB, hashtag HeyEvan. I'll be looking for those two hashtags here in the comment section to read out your comment. But first, before we do that, and we let kind of the comments catch up here, this was the moment that Nancy Pelosi announced intentions for articles of impeachment.
Sadly, but with confidence and humility, with allegiance to our founders, and a heart full of love for America. Today, I am asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment. I commend our committee chairs and our members for their somber approach to actions which others.
And that was just a little bit of the announcement there from Nancy Pelosi. Paul Compey Jr. in the hashtag section saying, JB, would you say that Trump should have tried to unite this country better? We're not gonna get too much into.
That's a political question. I think depends on what side you're on as to how you would react to that question.
It's our job, of course, to remain unbiased, to remain down the middle. But the question that Paul is asking, would you say that Trump should have tried to unite this country better?
I'm not sure that it's unitable at this point in time. I mean, right now we are in incredibly partisan times. I think that's obvious from where we sit. There's a number of things that we could do to make the country less partisan and to reduce this divide open primaries, end gerrymandering. We could go into that some other time. But I think right now it's going to be difficult for whoever wins next year, whether it's President Trump winning a second term or a Democrat taking the office from him. It's going to be really difficult for that person to unite the country as well. I mean, we really need some sort of shift in how this country is moving, because we can't keep up this way.
Yeah, Michelle Cianconi if I'm pronouncing that correctly, hopefully I am, Michelle. Apologies if I'm not. Hashtag, hey, Evan, America is going to be destroyed from within by the Democratic Party. Sad face emoji.
Let's hope not.
It's those types of comments, though, that just show how polarizing this is right now. It's not even just as far as the impeachment, not even just as far as President Trump, but when you're looking at the grand scheme of things between Democrats and Republicans, red, blue, conservative, liberal, I don't know if there's ever been as large of a gap right now as there is in this country between the two sides. And the pointing fingers is getting to a degree that I don't think that we've seen really ever.
Well, if you go back to our country's founding, there have been plenty of times since then where it's happened, but I think the rise of social media and technology makes it more ubiquitous, and it's a lot easier to see than it ever has been before. But hopefully we can find a way to unite. I don't see that happening over the next couple of months with these impeachment proceedings continuing to move forward, but we'll need to do it at some point, because things aren't going that well right now. I do want to, economically things are going great, but I mean with our partisan divides. We got to say goodbye right now.
Yeah.
I want to just a couple things. Please follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can find us at Evan Donovan, at JB Buno. Also, remember, if you are in the Tampa Bay area, and even if you're not and you want to watch online, the I-4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando is the most purple area of the most purple state in this country. And so what happens here electorally is crucially important to the presidential election next year. We have a Sunday morning political show that airs at 9:30 right before Meet the Press. You can always join us there for more insight and analysis. Proud to host that show and would love to have you as a viewer. Also, anytime something happens, whether these impeachment hearings, when they continue, we will be live streaming them right here. You can watch all day long, and we will have guests and analysis in between and before and after those hearings, and an eventual trial in the Senate. We'll be right here providing that insight to you. So please follow us and continue to join us here as we move forward.
And a big part to note as well is that the beauty of doing this online is that we can read your reaction in real time. Yep. If there is an outlandish comment, such as we've had some outlandish comments on both sides of the aisle, but when certain things happen, when certain developments happen, we can read through your comments in real time, get your reaction, make sure that you have a voice. 2020 is all about you, and if we are able to read your comments and kind of get the pulse as to what is happening, especially here on the I-4 corridor, that's a huge affordance to us. So we're going to be looking to make sure that we read your comments and make sure that your questions are answered in all of the coverage that we do today and every day forward up until November 2020.
And most importantly, you can give us your voice here, but the best place to do that is at the ballot box. Register to vote and make sure that you cast a ballot next year, no matter what side that you're on. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here. I want to say goodbye from WFLA's JB Buno, our digital anchor. I'm our political anchor here. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back. Every time there is some news to bring you on the politics side, we'll be here.
More on WFLA.com and the WFLA app, everybody.